Elizabeth Holmes is an interesting woman, and not just because she looks like a cartoon mouse. There was a time when she was seen as the next Steve Jobs, widely being praised as the world's youngest female self-made billionaire. She seems like a movie character, tailor-made to fit society's expectations of an ideal business leader. But all was not well behind the doors of her blood testing company. Over the last few years, lawsuits and accusations of fraud destroyed its reputation. Her personal net worth crashed to zero, and she is now an isolated pariah. Most see her as nothing more than a con artist. This is the story of how Elizabeth Holmes went from nothing to multi-billionaire to nothing. Elizabeth Holmes was 19 years old when she founded Theranos, a biotech company boasting revolutionary technology. With just a prick of the finger, their technology would test blood, something that until then required a needle blood test. Holmes developed the technology herself and raised $700 million from investors, quickly building Theranos into a major biotech brand. From the beginning, Theranos ran a very secretive operation, claiming secrecy was needed to protect their technology from competitors. In reality, it was to hide the fact that their technology doesn't work, but for many years they were given the benefit of the doubt, partly thanks to the respected figures backing it. As well as securing massive funding, Theranos' board of directors featured well-known politicians like Henry Kissinger and lawyers like David Boies, who was also Harvey Weinstein's lawyer, so the last few years haven't been great for him. At its peak, Theranos was valued at $9 billion. Holmes' personal net worth was over $4 billion. American pharmacy chain Walgreens formed a partnership with Theranos, giving blood tests in their stores. This was behind much of their growth. Holmes deliberately emulated Steve Jobs, even dressing in similar fashion. She regularly appeared on platforms with other billionaires. Everything was going well for her, but after a decade of secrecy and rapid growth, many were suspicious of her. The Wall Street Journal launched an investigation into Theranos, but they had a hard time finding much out. The company seems to have been deliberately structured to keep its operations secret, with each department of Theranos isolated from each other. Employees were not allowed to talk with each other about what they work on. It was a hive of secrecy, like something an evil villain would construct. But it was this secrecy that made Wall Street Journal writer John Carreyrou suspicious of them in the first place. He publicly questioned if Theranos was as profitable as it claimed to be, and if their blood tests even worked. It was the beginning of the end for Holmes. More and more people started asking how her technology actually worked, and she was unable to answer. Before long, the US government investigated Theranos and found nothing good. It turns out the technology on which Elizabeth Holmes built her company doesn't exist. It never existed. She lied the whole time, knowingly sending inaccurate results to patients. Their lab standards were found to be unbelievably poor. In the blink of an eye, Walgreens cut ties with Theranos, and countless lawsuits were launched by investors, patients, and the government itself. The Theranos party was over, with its own investors demanding compensation for being defrauded. Elizabeth Holmes was even banned from operating a lab, but even after the government began sanctioning Theranos, and Elizabeth Holmes' net worth dropped from $4 billion to zero, her company was rescued from bankruptcy. Fortress Investment Group put $100 million into Theranos in 2017. It's unclear why they spent so much to keep Theranos afloat. It's bizarre. Despite their efforts, the government took legal action against Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, charging them with massive fraud. She escaped criminal charges but was forced to give up all shares in Theranos, pay $500,000 and not run any public company for 10 years. She was among the most respected entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, with a multi-billion-dollar empire, but now she has nothing, less than nothing, as no one will ever trust her again. It's unlikely she will bounce back in any real way. It's also unlikely Theranos will. The company still exists and controls significant capital, but they don't really do anything. Don't expect to hear anything from them in future. The story of Elizabeth Holmes shows how deception can be as useful a tool as anything else. After all, she did build a $9 billion business on a lie. It's hard to believe investors gave her $700 million for a technology that doesn't even exist, but it was the boldness of a lie that allowed her to keep it going for so long.